All right. Well, it's been a while, but I am back on the mend and back in business. So it's been about 3 months since I dislocated my shoulder, got surgery a couple weeks after that, and spent 6 weeks with my arm in a sling, not doing much of anything. And now I've turned that corner and just starting to get to a point where I'm able to go out and do some longer day hikes in the mountains and start to look ahead to being able to do some backpacking, keeping everything non-technical, not scrambling, not climbing, but hiking is becoming more of a possibility, which is super exciting. So when I was thinking about what I could do to kind of start with long day hikes, get back up to altitude, spending most of the time on established hiking trails with a little bit of light off-trail travel if I can get it, I realized that one of Colorado's most famous and storied big mountain routes actually fits this description pretty well. So I've been starting to think about this idea of going and scouting different sections of the Nolan's 14 line and maybe looking ahead at the end of the summer to try and string it up and complete the route as a slower paced backpacking trip. So Nolan's 14 was established by the ultra running community. The premise is a 100-mile route that connects 14,000 foot peaks in the Sawatch Range in central Colorado. The start point is established, the end point is established, and the 14 summits all need to be visited, but there's no specific set route between each of the different peaks. The other piece of Nolan's 14 is the time constraint of wanting to complete it under 60 hours, which absolutely puts this in the ultra running, ultra endurance category. There's also been a lot of fastest known time FKT activity on the route and some really incredible efforts. For my part, I'm definitely more of a hiker, backpacker, like doing big long days and lots of vert and lots of distance for sure, but not a runner. And it's been really interesting for me to see Justin Simoni, the long ranger, who's been publishing a really comprehensive guide to what he calls slowlands, taking on the full extent of the 100 miles and the 14 summits, but at a more reasonable pace for mere mortals like me. This website from Matt Mahoney kind of describes the route: 60 hours, 100 miles on foot, 14 summits over 14,000 feet, 90,000 vertical feet, the 15% finish rate. And additionally, there's a list of all the official finishers here from over the years. But the main resource that I found helpful is Justin Simoni's website, Slowlands, longmayyourange.com. So as I've been diving into this, I think this guide is a really exemplary resource, from maps, route descriptions, bailout options, different alternate routes. Here's the main overview map that he's provided, as well as the overall elevation profile, which is pretty telling. So interestingly, this route is not sort of a high ridge traverse where each of the summits are kind of strung up on a high ridge line. You really drop all the way down into a river drainage between nearly every single one of these 14 peaks. So the vertical change is pretty extreme. So just to take an overview look at where this route is: central Colorado, the Sawatch Range is definitely, a really prominent line of mountains in the middle of the state, spanning the distance from Leadville past Buena Vista down to Salida. So since this Simoni guide has provided such a great resource with this CalTopo map, I'm just going to take a flip through this and sort of look at each section by section and just kind of familiarize myself with the different route options that he's showing here. So at the southern end, starting at the Shivano trailhead, the main line climbs up to Shivano on the standard trail, and we got a note here: leaving the popular hiking route, difficult terrain and footing, all the way down to Browns Creek. And then a couple alternates to climb up toward Antero. It looks like there's a road or a steeper gully, which is probably one of the runners' routes. going up Antero and taking the road down. Yeah, and taking that all the way down to the Chalk Creek Road here. So then it looks like there's another couple notes about water sources, seasonal creeks. That's great. And then, yeah, okay, so the route over Princeton, if I recall, is, yeah, it's kind of a class 3 crux and sort of this southwest ridge and then going down a northeast ridge, which is interesting because the standard route is totally on this east side and it's mostly a dirt road. All right, so then we drop down onto the Colorado Trail, Collegiate East, and then, okay, a couple different alternates up Mount Yale. When I climbed Yale, I did check out this section of the Nolan's line, so I am familiar with that. Let's see what notes we have here. Exposed descent, yeah, you're up above tree line for a while, and then dropping down this steep gully. I remember seeing some airplane wreckage in there, and this avalanche chute. And then, okay, difficult bushwhacking and raspberries. Down to a creek. Difficult creek crossing, okay. I thought there was a bridge around here somewhere, but maybe it splits off. Huh. Because the main summer trail does go right through here, too. So, okay, a couple options climbing up Columbia. So the main trail is this blue one here, switchbacking up. And then it looks like we have our FKT route that just climbs straight up the talus. That looks pretty brutal. Might just go for the trail on that one. Doesn't seem like too much of a distance penalty and probably easier going. So then we got the Columbia to Harvard Traverse. Interested to go out and try that since when I first attempted to go from Harvard to Columbia years ago, I did get stormed off the ridge and had to bail down kind of halfway through. And then, yeah, really curious about this route off of Harvard down to, Pine Creek here and then climbing up Oxford. I remember being on Oxford and looking over at Harvard, and, that's a pretty significant drop between the two of them. It looks like the creek crossing here is tricky too. Peaks and creeks. All right, from Oxford over to Belford, standard, and then, yeah, we got that loop around Missouri. Not sure what this one is. That's, I guess, kind of a shortcut. Yeah, I know this East Ridge is nasty, loose, fourth class garbage. So I guess it's between kind of taking the standard trail up and over versus this kind of alternate route. It's kind of interesting. And then, okay, taking this other trail down to Cloezy Lake. And then, yeah, I think this route up Huron is kind of a crux too. Really loose gully. Yeah, there's this trail on the map that doesn't exist. Standard route of Huron down all the way to Winfield. And then, yeah, this backside up La Plata seems interesting too. How much of it is on trail? Looks like, at least on the map, the trail ends pretty low down. So that might be kind of an interesting navigation to go and try and do. So, yeah, this is a different route up Elbert. Not really familiar with this one. It's kind of interesting, sort of traversing across this, just below this ridge line. All right, so then we're dropping down, going over Massive. Okay, up the main southwest slopes. I've done that. That's simple. And then down the East Ridge to the fish hatchery. So that'll be the 100 miles. Love that he's included the Holy Nolans option, segment 11 here, up to Mountain of the Holy Cross. That's really interesting. Holy Cross Wilderness, I've definitely talked about, is one of my favorite spots, and I love the peak too. So looking at this connecting route, okay, going past Turquoise Lake and then into the wilderness over the divide at this pass. What is this pass? Unnamed pass, it looks like, near Lonesome Lake. Hiking down a drainage. Okay, four-wheel drive road that you leave here. And then, okay, the Fall Creek Trail, sure. Going up there. Nice. Yeah, okay. This basin's really cool. All right. So, yeah, the Holy No One's extension is definitely pretty interesting. End up ending at the Half Moon Campground, which is definitely not as accessible as the fish hatchery. Okay, so that's over 30-mile extension. So, definitely increases the route by another couple of days. So I think priorities for scouting trips, it's about wanting to go and get eyes on those off-trail connector sections. I've got a pretty good sense of most of these standard trail approaches from when I climbed each of these peaks years ago. So I think just getting a better feel for some of those connectors that might be a little bit more intensive on the route finding and talus hopping side of things. It'd be good to kind of get a feel for that. Dropping down Tabawash and then climbing up toward Antero feels a little simpler than some of the others, and the fact that there's this dirt road alternate doesn't put that too high on my priorities. Then going up and over Princeton, I'm really curious about, since both the route up and the route down are different than the standard route in the East Ridge, and there is kind of some Class 3 cruxes involved. Maybe save that for a few more weeks, but I think doing that route up and over Princeton and then looping back around on the Colorado Trail will be good, but might be worth recruiting a friend to do a car shuttle for that, since this road walk wouldn't be super fun. The Columbia and Harvard Traverse, I'm definitely interested in doing. Just getting a sense of that connecting ridge would be good to do. It's definitely, one of the more well-traveled connectors on this route, and that might be one of the more straightforward day trips out of any of these. Dropping off Harvard and climbing up Oxford seems really steep and challenging, and it would be great to go check that out. But it might have to be kind of a lollipop loop. I'm not really seeing an easy way to do that. It's a pretty wide valley between the two. Looks like there is this trail with some dispersed camping markers on here, so that's promising. Trailhead's all the way out here at the road. That's a 8-mile approach to get between the two. So yeah, there might be something about doing an out and back up there and then checking out those two summits from that route. This route up Huron is interesting, and I think one of the cruxes with this closed trail, and I remember hearing some choice words about some of these gullies on this backside of Huron from some trip reports years ago. So I'm curious about doing a trip from this road up toward Winfield and maybe taking one of these approaches going up Missouri and down, and then up Huron and probably down the standard route over to Winfield and doing kind of a big loop at that would be good to check out. And then that also sets up for that south side of La Plata as an out and back from Winfield, so that could be good to do too. This looks pretty interesting. I'm really curious about what this climb looks like. Elbert and Massive. Yeah, I could see doing a loop of the south side of Elbert, going up this pink line and then down the standard blue trail and making that a loop. That could be good, not high priority. And then Massive is pretty well understood. I've done both of these two trails before. And then, yeah, I think just with the remoteness of the Holy Cross section, if I decided to try and do that, it's probably just going to be during the attempt and not on a trip of its own, because that would be pretty tough to set up a shuttle for, I think. So another consideration with the scouting is that the Colorado Trail, the Collegiate East, runs pretty parallel to most of this line, and you can see it highlighted here on a lot of these yellow routes that are about bypassing or skipping some of the peaks. It's really just as simple as dropping down to the trail and walking that line, on the eastern side of the range. To that point, I also found another resource over here on the ultralight subreddit. Shout out to Peaches Off Trail, just a little over a week ago, posted this description of a trip that he did, which came with a map, where it's really hiking the Collegiate Loop, so that Collegiate East side on the Colorado Trail and the Collegiate West side on the CDT, but trying to climb each of those 14 peaks along the way. So I was curious if there might be any loops that come out of looking at this version of the route. And there are definitely some interesting ideas. Here's that out and back up La Plata, and then you kind of headed back south, go over Missouri, and then continue north from there. It's kind of an interesting idea. Harvard Columbia, interesting approach here on the east to the saddle on the Traverse, which I've never really seen before, but that's interesting to consider. And then I think most of the peaks to the south here, yeah, he just did the standard route up and down Princeton, and then same for Antero and Shavtab. So different approach there. You're not seeing as many of those connecting off-trail routes that I've been wondering about, but this is useful to see as well. So given those options for scouting trips, again, I think that getting back to that Harvard and Columbia Traverse is going to be a good first one to go for, just because it is a pretty well-established route, and I know I'm pretty familiar with it as is, and it seems like a relatively straightforward day. So just to refresh my memory, I'll just hop over to 14ers.com, and then I can go to the peaks, Harvard, routes, and then, yeah, there's a description on here of the combination route, Harvard and Columbia Traverse. So looking at around 6,000 feet of climbing, over 15 miles. Definitely a good day's work there. And yeah, I got a description and good sequence of photos here, which are pretty useful. So I think the main thing about the Traverse is that it's not ridge direct. I think the ridge direct goes at like 5.7, interestingly, which is pretty uncommon for this area. But yeah, kind of following along to this point in the middle, and then sort of dropping down to the east side of that. And then I think it's just, yeah, a lot of boulder hopping back toward Columbia. So because I'm thinking of going northbound, I'll be doing the reverse of the route as described here. But I think it makes a lot of sense. So I also got a topo map. That all looks familiar. And just so I can have this on hand when I'm out there this weekend, I can grab the GPX file from the site here, and then I'll pop over to Gaia. I like using a mix of CalTopo and Gaia. I think they both are good at slightly different things, and what Gaia excels at is just the kind of quick drawing routes, and then having that sync with the phone app pretty seamlessly. And it's just kind of a more simple and better aesthetic quality experience to work with than CalTopo, although CalTopo definitely has a number of pretty advanced features as well that really come in handy when it comes especially to snow travel and skiing, with slope angle shading and sun aspect and a lot of different features on there that are pretty useful. So I think Gaia will be just a little more user-friendly for just making some of these quick scouting trip plans. So yeah, here's Harvard and Columbia. I've already got a GPX that I downloaded from the Simone Slowlands CalTopo map, just to have in here as a reference as well. And then I can go ahead and import that new GPX file. Okay, so it looks like the route's not complete, or at least this GPX track. It doesn't include the approach back on the trail after making the loop. So I'll just quickly go and draw my own version just to have the total numbers and also do it in the direction that I'm planning on going. So Gaia has this snapping feature for established trails that is pretty effective and easy to use. You can really get a really quick sense of what kind of distance and vertical change to expect on trails with this. And then just click back down here. Okay, so there's the full loop. So you can see that we got the elevation profile, pretty gradual grade, pretty easy approach right up to the turnoff where it starts to get a little bit steeper going up those switchbacks. And then you can see the route, coming right off that northwest ridge of Columbia, and then looping across that talus field, climbing up that point in between the two 14ers, and then continuing up that ridge over to Harvard. I think this, couple top 100 feet on Harvard might be a little bit steep and tricky, but should be a well-established trail for sure. And then just cruise out the valley from there. So yeah, I'll go ahead and save this as Columbia Harvard, and then I can just save this, and then when I open it up on my phone, that'll synchronize and I'll have it. I already have all of Colorado downloaded, so I'll be able to have the topo background there, and that'll just be good to have in hand. I'm not expecting too many route finding difficulties on this first trip, but always good to have a map in hand. So Sunday is looking good, sunny and breezy, high around 60. No chance of thunderstorms, which is great. So expect a good weather window, but don't want to rely on that completely, of course. Still want to get an early start. See what mountain forecast says compared to that. Mount Harvard. So yeah, again, Sunday, pretty clear. Winds around 30. A little high, but not too bad. Yeah, temps a little cooler here than on NOAA, up at 14. Mid-mountain, more similar to what we were seeing there. And then I think the trailhead will start around 10, so we won't be seeing this kind of heat on the hike down at 8,000. So yeah, that's kind of just the basic quick trip planning process for a solo 14er day hike. Pretty simple, just kind of looking at the maps, reading some beta on the route description, and checking the weather reports, make sure that it's all going to line up. So I'll head down there this weekend, camp at the trailhead, probably start around 4 o'clock or so, and go head up Columbia, take on the Traverse, and make a loop back over Harvard. So stay tuned for that video, and subscribe to keep up with the rest of these scouting trips for the Nolan's 14 Peaks. And, definitely look forward to my attempt of the big line here at the end of the summer. So again, thanks for watching, and subscribe for more.